What if the most powerful shift in your life came not from what you said, but from what you did when no one was watching? We live in a world that rewards noise, performance, and public affirmation. But what if the universe doesn't respond to volume? It responds to frequency. The truth is, what you nurture in silence, your thoughts, your emotions, your unseen actions, holds more power than anything you broadcast. And yet, most people unknowingly leak their energy through oversharing, doubt, or needing proof before believing. This video will show you how to reverse that. You'll discover how to manifest without telling anyone, how to align with your inner power quietly, and how the most sacred things grow in the dark, just like seeds, just like strength. We're not here to chase validation. We're here to build quiet confidence, grounded purpose, and unshakable presence through stoic action and spiritual precision. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, know this. Your silence is not a weakness. It is your sanctuary. Your stillness is not emptiness. It is energy in its purest form, preparing for impact. You are not alone in this. There's a growing brotherhood of minds choosing focus over noise, resilience over overreaction, and private discipline over public display. Stay with me, because what's coming next will not only rewire how you think, it might just help the universe deliver what you thought was impossible. Subscribe now, and in the comments, share your quiet fight. You're not the only one walking this path. 1. What you do in silence holds the greatest power. There is a quiet place within you where the real work begins, far from attention, beyond applause, and untouched by the opinions of others. That space is sacred, and what you do there, in complete silence, will shape the life you live far more than anything you say out loud. In a world obsessed with performance, it's easy to believe that progress requires visibility. But visibility is not validation, and growth does not depend on being seen. True strength forms in the unseen, where intention meets discipline, and where you're not driven by recognition, but by the quiet conviction that you are becoming something more. Silence isn't emptiness, it's alignment. When you create in silence, you're not hiding, you're protecting the frequency of your becoming. This is where Stoic discipline begins, not with noise but with stillness, not with reaction but with response. The man who trains without needing an audience becomes dangerous in the best way. Because he's not chasing validation, he's anchored, he's consistent when no one claps. That is power the world cannot touch. The mind, when left to its own noise, craves confirmation. But Stoicism trains you to resist that pull. It teaches you to operate without needing feedback, to move with precision even when no one acknowledges your effort. The moment you free yourself from the need to be seen, you access a deeper kind of energy, pure, undisturbed, and resilient. The universe does not respond to noise, it responds to vibration, and the most potent vibrations come not from shouting your intentions, but from embodying them quietly. Every time you take action without needing to broadcast it, you amplify your alignment with purpose. You shift from force to flow, from proving to becoming. This isn't about hiding, it's about honoring. There's a difference between silence that comes from fear and silence that comes from knowing. One is insecurity. The other is inner power. Stoic action lives in that second form. It's calm, it's clean, it's steady. Think about how many people burn out, not because they lacked effort, but because their energy was spread too thin across too many eyes, too many opinions, too much external noise. But the ones who remain grounded, they guard their process. They don't need to tell everyone what they're building because they're too busy building it. That level of emotional control, that ability to keep your vision sacred, is what separates a person who constantly starts over from the one who actually finishes. Let others post every move. Let them explain every step. You don't need to. Because what you're doing is deeper, and deeper things take longer. They demand stillness. They demand secrecy. Like seeds under soil or steel forged in fire, they develop strength before they ever show results. Your silence is not a void, it is a field of force. And when the time is right, results will speak. Without the need to defend, without the need to justify. They will arrive fully formed, undeniable, and inevitable. Because they were nurtured properly, in the quiet. So stop leaking your energy. Protect your work, protect your growth, let the noise distract someone else. You don't need noise to be powerful. You don't need an audience to rise. What you need is devotion behind closed doors. What you need is alignment when no one's watching. What you need is to remember that your silence is not the absence of action. It is where action takes root. And if you can be disciplined there, the impossible no longer feels out of reach. It simply becomes what's next. 2. Bless others without telling them. There's a kind of power that doesn't make noise, doesn't demand credit, and doesn't need recognition. It moves quietly, like light passing through a window, subtle but transformative. That power is kindness, offered in silence. When you bless someone without telling them, when you hold space for their healing without announcing it, when you send them peace while they'll never know it came from you, that is not weakness. That is spiritual clarity. It's emotional mastery. It's the very essence of Stoic compassion, choosing to act with virtue not for reward, but because it's right. Too often, we tie the act of giving to some form of transaction, words, attention, reciprocation. But Stoicism reminds us that virtue is complete in itself. You don't forgive someone to hear thank you. You forgive because your inner peace matters more than carrying resentment. And sometimes, that forgiveness doesn't even need to be said out loud. You can release the anger in your own heart without ever involving them. The freedom comes not from reconciliation, but from release. That is the unseen energy shift that changes everything, within you first and then around you. When you bless others in silence, you rewire your emotional frequency. You move away from reaction and into intention. That's the shift the universe responds to. It's not about performing kindness. It's about embodying it, quietly, consistently, even when no one knows. Especially when no one knows. Because that's when it's pure, that's when it's real, and that's when it begins to ripple through reality, unseen but unmistakable. Just like a tuning fork changes the air around it, your internal energy begins to shape outcomes you never expected. People think healing relationships always start with a conversation, but sometimes it starts with a silent blessing. A father who hasn't spoken to his son in years begins each day by holding his son's name in the space of love, even when there's no reply. Over time, something softens, not just in the son, but in the father, because resentment hardens the one who holds it. But blessing, quiet, unconditional blessing, softens the soul. That's not philosophy. That's practical alchemy. In Stoic thought, we are told to act with reason and virtue, regardless of whether the world sees it. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule by vengeance. He ruled by character. The same principle applies to your own life. You don't need to retaliate to feel powerful. You don't need to prove your right to restore your peace. You only need to protect your own alignment. And the surest way to do that is through silent goodwill. Bless the one who wronged you, not because they earned it, but carrying the weight of their harm keeps you stuck. The mind may argue that this is a weakness, that silence is surrender. But that's only true if you're still waiting to be validated. If you've outgrown that need, then silent blessings become your rebellion, your clarity, your freedom. You are no longer reacting, you are creating. You are no longer resisting, you are reshaping reality through your inner posture. That posture, rooted in quiet strength, carries a frequency the universe cannot ignore. Every time you send a silent blessing, you withdraw from conflict and step into higher alignment. You stop trying to change people, and you begin to change the space between you and them. That's where real transformation lives, in the invisible, in the subtle, in the sincere. You won't always see immediate results, and you're not supposed to. Stoic virtue does not chase outcomes. It stays the course. It holds its frequency. It blesses anyway. So if there's someone in your life who hurt you, misunderstood you, or simply disappeared, don't wait for the right words. Send the right energy, in stillness, in secret, and let it go. Not as a tactic, but as a way of reclaiming yourself, because your peace is worth more than any explanation, and your energy is too sacred to waste on bitterness. You don't need to be seen blessing others. Just bless them, quietly, completely, and then move forward, lighter than before. 3. Your inner world creates your outer reality. You can't change the world around you if you don't first confront the world within you. Reality doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you deeply believe. especially when no one is watching. What's repeated in silence, what you accept without question, what you tell yourself in your quietest moments, those are the blueprints shaping everything outside of you. Not because life is magical, but because life is reflective. Most people try to rearrange their circumstances without ever updating the operating system in their mind. I used to live in a constant state of urgency, rushed, reactive, always chasing the next win, but never arriving. I thought I needed more time, more control, more external structure. But nothing shifted until I paused long enough to examine how I spoke to myself when things didn't go my way. That's where the resistance was, not in the world, but in me. My inner dialogue was filled with quiet pressure. You're behind, you're not enough yet, you should be further by now. And the more I believed it, the more my outer world mirrored that tension back to me. People treated me as disposable. Deadlines felt crushing. Opportunities slipped away. Stoic philosophy reminds us that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And that includes the silent judgments we project onto ourselves. Do you want to change your results? Begin by changing your internal lens. Because the person who sees himself as powerless, even with 1,000 tools, will use them poorly. But the man who quietly carries the belief that he is already enough, already capable, already aligned, that man builds momentum even with less. He doesn't need perfect conditions. His belief conditions the world to respond to him differently. There's a kind of alignment that doesn't require effort. It just requires clarity. When you walk into a room carrying confusion, people feel it. When you walk in grounded, calm, and unattached, opportunities seem to find you. It's not magic. It's resonance. It's frequency. The Stoics would call it inner equilibrium. You're no longer ruled by outcomes. You are ruled by principle. You operate from your center, not from the chaos around you. And the world takes notice, even if no one says it out loud. This shift is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's subtle and deliberate. You start small. You listen to how you speak to yourself during setbacks. You watch your thoughts when you're overlooked. You pay attention to the stories you keep rehearsing in your head. And when you catch one that weakens you, you don't argue with it. You replace it. Quietly, consistently. You begin feeding the belief that you are grounded. You are capable. You are no longer defined by what hasn't worked. And you do it daily, even when the results haven't caught up. Especially then. Because that's when it matters most. The mind is like soil. Whatever you plant in repetition begins to grow. Fear grows. Self-doubt grows. But so does discipline. So does quiet certainty. So does grounded self-respect. What you water will eventually bloom into behavior, and behavior becomes your results. This is why affirmations only work when they move from your mouth to your bones. When they stop being words and start becoming identity. That's not hype. That's how reality bends, from the inside out. So if your external world feels heavy, cluttered, and chaotic, don't rush to fix the surface. Sit with your thoughts. Reroute the wiring. Don't just react. Reframe. Don't just push harder. Align deeper. The strongest people aren't loud about their power. They carry it in how they respond to themselves when no one's looking. That's the part of you that sets the tone for everything. You don't need another strategy. You need a shift in what you believe is true about you. Because until that changes, the world can only echo back what you're already saying to yourself. Speak to yourself with strength, with clarity, with unwavering calm. Even in doubt, speak alignment. Especially in uncertainty, speak forward. What you speak inside is what you become outside. Your thoughts are not background noise. They are the origin of your reality. And when you master that, silently, steadily, you stop reacting to life and start creating it. 4. Feel the wish fulfilled, then say nothing. The most powerful transformation begins in silence, not because you're hiding it, but because what's sacred needs time to root before it can rise. When you feel your wish has already been fulfilled, you send a signal into reality that doesn't need words, explanations, or approval. It's the purest form of alignment, where thought, emotion, and being converge quietly into presence. And yet, most people sabotage their own becoming by announcing too early, diluting their energy through conversation, or seeking validation from those who were never meant to understand the dream in the first place. You don't have to convince anyone that you're changing. You don't need to post your process or narrate your evolution. All you have to do is feel the life you want, deeply, truthfully, as if it were already yours, and then move as though it's unfolding. Not in fantasy, but in emotional clarity. Because once your body believes it, the universe begins to adjust around you. Reality bends to the rhythm of your conviction, not the noise of your announcement. This is the core of inner power. You don't need permission to believe. You just need discipline to believe quietly. Stoic wisdom doesn't scream its progress. It builds it, day by day, internally first. The man who trains in silence becomes dangerous because he isn't performing for attention. He's preparing for alignment, and when it arrives, doesn't look like luck. It looks inevitable. That's the paradox of manifestation. It's not about force. It's not even about hope. It's about embodiment. And embodiment is silent. You begin to act, speak, and carry yourself, not based on what you lack, but based on who you've already decided to become. You feel the confidence of that new role, the peace of that new place, the gratitude for the things that haven't yet arrived but feel real in your chest. That is the frequency the universe can't ignore. And when you hold that state long enough, without leaking your belief into the hands of others, it gathers strength, like fire behind closed doors. Every time you tell someone your dream too soon, you open a door for doubt to walk in. Sometimes theirs, sometimes your own. Not because they mean harm, but because they don't carry the same vision, the same emotional frequency, or the same timing. And so you start to adjust, explain, overthink. You lose alignment in the name of sharing. But when you keep it close, when you treat your vision like a sacred flame, not to be hidden out of fear but protected out of wisdom, it grows. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. There's something holy about a person who no longer needs to be believed, who doesn't need applause to keep moving, who wakes up every day and holds their vision in silence, not as a wish, but as a truth not yet revealed. That is where dignity meets devotion. And that's the kind of presence that rewrites outcomes, not because of effort, but because of energy. So the next time you feel something rising within you, a desire, a direction, a version of yourself you haven't yet stepped into, don't rush to speak it. Don't turn it into content. Let it breathe in the dark. Let it build its strength. Speak to it through action. Feed it through attention. Walk with it like it's already true. And say nothing. Because when it comes to the deepest becoming, words aren't strong enough anyway. But your frequency is. Your presence is. And your consistency, especially in silence, is what makes the impossible begin to take form. Not because you shouted it into existence, but because you were willing to live as if it was already done. Quietly, completely, unshakably. 5. Let gratitude lead before the evidence arrives. Gratitude is not a reaction, it is a declaration. It is what you choose when life hasn't caught up with your vision, when nothing around you looks like progress, and yet you whisper thank you as if everything you've asked for is already unfolding behind the veil. To live this way is not to pretend, it is to align. Alignment begins when you stop needing proof to believe, when you're no longer waiting for the world to give you a reason to feel whole, because you've already chosen to meet it from wholeness. There will be seasons where nothing makes sense. You'll wake up and feel lost. The direction isn't clear, the results aren't showing. You've been consistent, and yet the silence is deafening. This is the moment most people quit. They trade intention for control. They abandon calm for panic. But Stoicism teaches you to remain anchored, act with discipline, not outcome, to stay in the storm with your principles intact. And the highest principle in the absence of clarity is gratitude. Because when you give thanks before receiving, you're not just expressing trust, you're shaping the space for what you desire to arrive. Gratitude is emotional frequency. It's a shift in your nervous system. When practiced deeply and quietly, it overrides fear. It softens resistance. It lifts you from scarcity into presence. And presence is the only place from which real manifestation begins. The mind that constantly asks, "Why isn't it here yet?" blocks the very flow it's waiting for. But the mind that breathes and says, "Thank you anyway," becomes magnetic, not out of desperation, but because it is already resonating with the life it's calling in. There is strength in that posture. Quiet, unshakable strength. Imagine walking into a day with no external reason to celebrate and still saying, "I am thankful for the peace that is coming, for the abundance I cannot see, for the love I'm already preparing to give and receive." You don't do that because it's easy. You do it because it's powerful, because it's the opposite of control, because it is the truest test of inner stillness. Can I remain grateful when everything around me tells me I should doubt? This is where inner mastery begins, not when circumstances feel good, but when you choose your state regardless of them. When you shift from asking to appreciating, from chasing to receiving, and you do it without noise, without needing anyone else to validate the choice. That's when gratitude becomes your compass, not as sentiment, but as a strategy. Not to feel good, but to stay grounded. Not to attract something faster, but to align yourself so deeply that what's meant for you can find you without obstruction. Every moment you feel unsteady is a moment to return to this quiet strength. Don't wait for the job to appear before you're thankful. Don't wait for the healing to begin before you breathe like someone who's already whole. Don't wait for someone to love you before you radiate the energy of someone who knows they're worth loving. Gratitude is not the end of the journey. It is the atmosphere in which the journey begins to make sense. So, when doubt creeps in and the results aren't showing, pause, go within, feel the breath, drop back into your body, and say thank you. Not out of habit, but out of power. Thank you for the unseen, for the roots taking hold beneath the surface, for the growth you're not yet meant to see. And say it like you mean it, because in that vibration, the universe listens differently. Not because you spoke louder, but because you finally matched the frequency of the life you were designed to live. What you're seeking already exists, but it won't arrive through force. It arrives through alignment. And the first sign of alignment is always the same. Silent, grounded, unwavering gratitude. Before the evidence, before the applause, before the world says yes. Gratitude that needs no proof is the proof. It's the bridge between where you are and what's on the way. 6. Guard your desires like sacred fire. Some things lose their power the moment you speak them too soon. A dream, when exposed to the wrong energy, flickers like a flame caught in the wind, still alive, but shaken. Not every desire is meant to be shared in its early form. Some are meant to be guarded, quietly, like sacred fire. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. What's forming inside you is not ready for the noise of the outside world. It's still gathering shape, still becoming real within your nervous system. And like any fire that hasn't yet fully caught, it needs stillness, shelter, time. In a culture that rewards constant updates, instant validation, and public declarations, restraint becomes a kind of spiritual discipline. When you choose not to announce your next move, not to explain your transformation, and not to display your intentions, you create space for those things to grow without interruption. That silence is not absence, it's alignment. It's your way of protecting your emotional frequency from interference. Not every eye understands what it sees, and not every ear is equipped to receive what your spirit is cultivating. Stoicism teaches us to act without attachment to approval, to stay rooted in purpose rather than perception. And there is no greater application of that than learning to hold your desires close, not as secrets, but as seeds. You don't dig up a seed to prove that it's growing. You water it in quietly, you let it push through the darkness in its own timing. The same principle applies here. Speak less, nurture more. The deeper the desire, the more protection it needs in its early life. You may have noticed that every time you've shared a dream too early, something in you began to shift, not forward but sideways. You start explaining, you start adjusting to people's reactions. You second-guess what was once clear. That energy, doubt, dilution, detour, didn't come from the dream. It came from exposing it before it was ready to stand on its own. This is not about hiding. It's about honoring the slow, quiet, sacred becoming of what matters most to you. When you hold your desires with respect, you stop performing for the world. You start building with the world inside you. And the more deeply you believe, the less you need to prove. Because the man who truly knows where he's going doesn't need to talk about the map. He's already walking, step by step, no spotlight, no applause, just quiet certainty, backed by aligned action. And that's the kind of energy that draws opportunities to you. Not because you chased them, but because you were consistent enough to meet them. Your desires are not content. They're not trends. They're not punchlines for conversations with people who don't understand your path. They are sacred, and sacred things lose power in casual hands. When you keep them close, when you let them grow in silence, they become part of your being. Not something you're chasing, but something you already are. You don't manifest from wanting, you manifest from knowing, from becoming, from protecting your state long enough for reality to mirror it back. So the next time you feel that quiet nudge towards something big, something that excites you, terrifies you, or both, don't rush to share it. Let it sit inside you. Let it burn. Let it reshape your posture, your habits, and your energy. Let it become undeniable within you before you ever speak of it. Because when the desire is strong enough, it will speak for itself throughout your life. And when that moment comes, there will be no need to convince anyone. You'll be the evidence. You'll be the living result of everything you chose to protect in silence. Like fire that once flickered in the dark and now lights your entire path. 7. You don't need to announce your evolution. Growth doesn't require a spotlight. The most powerful changes often happen in silence, not because you're hiding, but because what's real doesn't beg to be seen. When you begin to shift inwardly, you don't owe the world an explanation. You don't need to narrate every step of your evolution. Your presence will eventually speak louder than any announcement ever could. The real transformation leaves traces in how you carry yourself, in how you respond, and in how your energy feels to those around you. No status update is required. There's a strange pressure in modern life to constantly explain yourself, to justify why you're pulling back, to prove that your new routine, your inner peace, your stillness is legitimate. But what if you didn't? What if you allowed the process to be yours alone, uninterrupted by external expectations? That is where true strength lives. Not in how loudly you declare your new path, but in how steadily you walk it. The more grounded you become, the less you need others to understand your direction. And the less you speak about the change, the more you actually embody it. Stoic discipline teaches us that virtue doesn't need to be broadcast. A man who is truly becoming stronger, calmer, wiser, he doesn't need to explain that to anyone. His life becomes the message. His silence becomes a kind of gravity. You feel it in the way he listens, in the way he no longer reacts, he no longer seeks to be right. Something about him is just different. That kind of presence is not built through performance. It is carved in solitude. When I began changing the way I think, the way I move through discomfort, the way I manage my emotional state, no one knew. I didn't share my new routines, my late-night reflections, or the shifts happening in the way I viewed myself. Because I wasn't doing it to be seen. I was doing it to breathe again, to return to myself. And that kind of return doesn't need an audience, it needs commitment. Quiet, consistent, internal commitment. The truth is, when you stop performing your growth, it actually deepens. You no longer worry about whether others believe it. You're too busy becoming it. That's when the ego loosens its grip. That's when the need to prove becomes irrelevant. You're no longer seeking confirmation that you're changing. You already feel it in your nervous system. You already see it in your choices. You already experience it in your capacity to remain calm in situations that once triggered you. And that internal evidence is enough. There's also something sacred about evolving in private, without applause, without validation. It's a space where your growth becomes pure again, where your intention becomes focused, not on being impressive, but on being whole. And when that intention is clear, the outer world begins to respond in subtle but powerful ways. People will sense it, not because you said anything, but because something in your energy tells them you've changed. Let them notice without you having to say it. Let your silence carry the weight of your transformation. Let your peace speak for you, because the ones who truly evolve never need to be convinced. They don't demand understanding, they don't chase acknowledgement, they simply show up differently, and the world rearranges itself in response. So the next time you feel the urge to announce your evolution, pause. Ask yourself who you're trying to convince, then return to your practice, to your stillness, to your becoming. Because you are not here to prove growth. You are here to live it, to embody it, quietly, fully, without needing the world to clap. That is when you know it's real. That is when you know you've become the evidence. The most profound transformations begin not in noise but in quiet. What you do in silence, the dreams you protect, the energy you guard, the gratitude you offer before the world gives you a reason, those are the sacred practices that reshape your reality from the inside out. This isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about training your mind to lead with intention, to act without needing applause, and to trust in unseen forces that work far beyond what logic can explain. You've learned that the invisible world within you creates the visible world around you, that your belief, when anchored in stillness, carries more power than any spoken goal. That feeling of the wish fulfilled, guarding your desires like sacred fire, and letting gratitude rise before results arrive. These are not poetic ideas. They are disciplines. They are your edge, your spiritual armor, your daily path to alignment with the deeper rhythms of the universe. So take these truths and practice them, not once, every day, in the morning stillness, in the chaos of noon, in the quiet moments before sleep. Build a life that flows from your inner strength, not your outer status. And as you do, you'll see how life begins to meet you in ways you never could have planned. If this message stirred something in you, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters. Your journey, practiced in silence, may just be what lights the way for someone else.